Joe Biden, his reelect race, it's rough. I mean, looking at the latest polls, he's had a little bit of a poll bounce, Trump is still up in the Real Clear Politics polling average, but barely, by like 0.3 points. Biden is at 44.5. Trump is at 44.8. There has been a slight uptick for Joe Biden. That's largely because Donald Trump has been in court, I think, for the last couple of weeks. In the last 5 polls, Trump is leading in 3 and Biden is leading in 2. With that said, when you look at the state polling data, Trump is still up in every swing state with the exception of Pennsylvania, and that's within the margin of error. The state that's really bad for Joe Biden right now is Michigan. He is down by 3 in Michigan, according to the current polling data, and he's also down by almost 5 in Nevada. There is a Bloomberg Morning Consult poll, the first in a while, that shows Biden up in Michigan by a couple of points, but that is contradicted by a more recent Fox News poll that shows Trump up 3 and an MRG poll that shows Trump up 6. So in other words, Joe Biden is in real trouble in this reelect race. And so he has to focus in on the idea that Donald Trump is a tyrant. There's only one problem. The actual tyrant who is currently using tyrannical executive powers to completely reshape the country is Joe Biden. And he's doing so while not being a sentient human. So he had a very embarrassing teleprompter moment. And this is not the first time he's done this. He reads the stage directions out loud. Now, I will admit that when you read from a teleprompter, which I've done in speeches before, sometimes you have to take a moment to realize they'll suddenly randomly stack a stage direction in the middle of the text. So if you actually are just sort of autopiloting it, you could do this. But this one is pretty bad. Like anyone who has an ounce of neuron function here should have not done this. Here was Joe Biden yesterday.
4 more years. Pause.
4 more years. 4 more years.
He's literally asking for them to just chant 4 more years. And he pauses for a long time before he says pause. It's not as though he's like 4 more years, pause, because it was like stacked right together or something. He goes, 4 more years. Pause. Like, what the? That dude is no longer with us, gang. I mean, first of all, his face is turning into a turnip. But beyond that, like, what is even going on in that brain? The answer is not much. But that's not stopping him from using vast executive powers. $20 barely buys you anything these days. You can't fill your gas tank for under $20. But you know what $20 will get you? Well, from the cell phone company I use, Pure Talk, you can get unlimited talk, text, and plenty of 5G data for just $20 a month. Pure Talk gives you the same quality of service as your current cell phone provider, but for about half the cost. The average family saves almost $1,000 a year, all with no contracts and no activation fees. You can switch to Pure Talk and keep the phone and phone number you currently use, or you can take advantage of their great deals on the latest iPhones and Androids. Making the switch, it's incredibly easy. Their U.S. customer service team can help you join Pure Talk in as little as 10 minutes. Choose to spend your hard-earned money with a wireless company that shares your values, supports our military and veterans, creates American jobs, and refuses to advertise on, the fake news networks. Stop spending an insane amount of money on your phone plan. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Right now, my listeners can get an additional 50% off their very first month of coverage. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, puretalk.com/Shapiro. They've got an incredible tower network. The coverage is excellent, and you're spending money on a company that actually likes you. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro to get started. So over the course of the last week, last Friday, the Biden administration issued new rules cementing protections for LGBTQ plus minus divided by students under federal law and reversing a number of Trump-era policies dictating how schools should respond to cases of alleged sexual misconduct in K through 12 schools and college campuses. This is according to the New York Times. The new rule, which will take effect August 1st, effectively broadened the scope of Title IX. They extend the law's reach to prohibit discrimination and harassment based on gender identity. So what does that mean? That means that Title IX means that if you are a dude with full twig and berries and you claim you're a lady and you want to compete with the ladies and they say no, that could now be in violation of Title IX of the Civil Rights Act. Now, we talked about the Civil Rights Act a little bit earlier. I've made the case for a very long time. The Civil Rights Act really complicates American law in really, really extraordinary ways. But suffice it to say, the Biden administration, which is being very soft on Title VI of the Civil Rights Act with regard to anti-Semitism, is being very rough on Title IX of the Civil Rights Act with regard to boys who think they are girls. So according to Joe Biden, the new regulations stress that while writ large exclusion based on gender identity violated Title IX, the new regulations did not extend to single-sex living facilities or sports teams. The Education Department is pursuing a second rule dealing with sex-related eligibility for male and female sports teams. But get ready for it, gang. They're going to go all the way because they have a feeling they need the radical left supporting them. Not only that, they are changing all of the Title IX restrictions that have been changed by the Trump administration to protect students who are accused, for example, of sexual harassment on campus. So there were all these kangaroo courts that existed on college campuses where boys who were accused of sexual assault or harassment on campus were not allowed to confront their accusers. There was no court-like actual witness testimony. Instead, it was basically if a girl accuses, the boy gets suspended or expelled. And now Joe Biden is walking all of that back. The Obama administration had directed schools to ramp up investigations into sexual assault complaints under the threat of losing federal funding. And that ended with a bunch of lawsuits against schools, which had gone too far. And so the Trump administration walked that back. Now the Biden administration is walking back the Trump walk back, and they're going back to the kangaroo courts. So that is just one executive action that the Biden administration has taken over the course of the last week. Then there are some that have been less well noticed, but have pretty significant consequences. One of them, for example, is a new Bureau of Land Management rule. So the Bureau of Land Management is one of the most restrictive agencies in the entire federal government, and no one pays any attention to it except very, very occasionally. You might recall there was a story about a rancher named Cliven Bundy years ago who got in a spat with the Bureau of Land Management because he had a ranch. And the Bureau of Land Management tried to suggest that basically because of tortoises, he could not use his ranch. The Bureau of Land Management controls huge swaths of American land. The Bureau of Land Management is like one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government. If you look, for example, at the amount of land controlled by the Bureau of Land Management in the Southwest, it is absolutely extraordinary. I'm looking at a map right now of the Bureau of Land Management's control of the southwestern United States, and the answer is that they control nearly all of Nevada, like nearly all of it. They control huge chunks of the Southwest. They control huge parts of Alaska. And so if they decide that they're going to issue rules that prevent, for example, grazing, they can absolutely destroy ranchers. Well, now they've released a new rule to guide balanced management and conservation of public lands. And it's largely designed, by the way, to prevent mining. Hilariously, here's how they sum up their new rule, okay? Because the Secretary, Deb Haaland of the Interior Secretary, here's what she says. As stewards of public lands, the Interior Department takes seriously our role in helping bolster landscape resilience in the face of worsening climate impacts. Today's final rule helps restore balance to our public lands as we continue to use our best available science to restore habitat, guide strategic and responsible development, and sustain our public lands for generations to come. Okay, well, what is the best available science? The best available science is, listen, there's a quote from the Department of the Interior. Okay, quote, building on decades of land management expertise and emphasizing the use of science and data, including indigenous knowledge to guide balanced decision-making. I mean, we have scientists. They've been doing the job for a while. What is this indigenous knowledge of which you speak? Like, what are we talking about? Can you be a little more specific? But again, the goal here is to, basically DEI the land. Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.